3 clinks of glass, 1 slap, and 4 unblinking stares. It all happened in 8 seconds, enough to redirect my entire family's trajectory. He thought it was just my mother and relatives at the table. He didn't know the seat at the end held a legal landmine with its pin already pulled. I hadn't brought dessert to Thanksgiving dinner. I'd brought a restraining order, a hidden recorder, and 2 dinner guests he'd wish he'd never met. The turkey wasn't the only thing that got carved that night. My name is Harper Lane, and at 32, I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who bleeds for you when the knife comes out. I work as a compliance coordinator at Northland Meridian Logistics in Clearwater Ridge, Minnesota. A job that taught me to spot irregularities and patterns most people ignore. That skill would prove more valuable at my mother's dinner table than in any corporate audit. My mother, Lorraine, remarried 3 years ago. Calvin Brandt swept into her life with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. A local real estate developer with a firm handshake and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. I kept my distance, maintaining the polite fiction of family harmony while living alone in my apartment downtown. Childless by choice, boundaries drawn in invisible ink. The warning signs started small, like hairline cracks in a foundation. Mom's savings account, once robust from Dad's life insurance, began hemorrhaging money. Investments, she'd say, waving away my concerns with hands that trembled slightly. Calvin knows what he's doing. Then came the contracts. Calvin would spread them across the kitchen table like tarot cards, pointing at signature lines while Mom nodded along. Glasses forgotten upstairs. I'd catch glimpses, property transfers, loan applications, documents that made my compliance training scream warnings. My half-brother Tyler, 28, and still finding his footing after art school, had been sucked into Calvin's business 6 months ago. Just temporary, he'd assured me, but I watched his shoulders grow heavier with each passing week, his texts growing shorter, phone calls avoided. Tyler seems stressed. I mentioned to Mom during our weekly coffee. She stirred her latte, eyes fixed on the swirl of foam. Calvin's teaching him the business. It's good for him. Is it? I pressed. He wanted to open his own studio. Dreams don't pay bills. Harper. The words came out in Calvin's cadence, not hers. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of Mom's worried texts sent at 2 a.m., then deleted by morning. Photos of bruises on Tyler's arms he claimed came from moving equipment. The business cards Calvin left around the house for companies that didn't exist in any database I could access. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, Mom called to confirm I'd come to dinner. Her voice carried that forced brightness that had become her default setting. Calvin wants to make it special this year. He's invited some business associates. I'll be there, I promised, already knowing this would be no ordinary family gathering. The next day, she texted asking if I could help with a computer thing. When I arrived, I found her trying to understand a mortgage refinancing document. Calvin had marked every signature line with yellow tabs. He says it'll lower our payments, she explained, but her fingers worried at the paper's edge. Mom, this is a cash-out refinance. You're borrowing against the house's equity. For improvements, Calvin has plans. Where's the money going? She couldn't answer. When Calvin came home an hour later, finding me at the table with the documents, his face shifted through several expressions before settling on jovial dismissal. Harper, always the watchdog, aren't you? He clasped my shoulder too hard. Just boring business stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. My mother's financial security is something I worry about. His grip tightened. Your mother is my wife. I take care of what's mine. The possession in that statement made my skin crawl. I left, but not before photographing every document on that table. That night, I made a decision. If Calvin wanted to play games with my family's future, I'd show him what it meant to play against someone who understood the rules better than he did. Thanksgiving would be more than a family dinner. It would be a reckoning. The next morning, I began making my own preparations, starting with a call to a lawyer who specialized in financial abuse cases. The web Calvin had woven was about to meet someone who knew how to untangle threads without him noticing until the entire fabric fell apart. The Monday after photographing those documents, I arrived at Northland Meridian Logistics earlier than usual. My desk overlooked the shipping floor, where containers moved like chess pieces in a game worth millions. But that morning, my focus was on the screen, specifically on a routing anomaly I'd flagged the previous week. A shell company named Brant Ridge Services had appeared in our system, billing for consulting services on shipments that never required consultation. The amounts were modest, $8,000 here, $12,000 there, small enough to fly under most radars. But patterns are my specialty, and this one screamed fraud. The EIN matched, the signature on the digital authorization matched. Calvin Brant was using his company as a pass-through, skimming from our logistics contracts. I pulled transaction records, cross-referencing dates with Calvin's business trips Mom had mentioned. Perfect alignment. When Calvin was supposedly meeting investors in Chicago, Brant Ridge Services billed Northland for route optimization consultation on Chicago-bound shipments. My fingers trembled as I compiled the evidence. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was federal wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, the kind of charges that came with prison time, not just divorce papers. I encrypted everything and saved it to 3 separate drives. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I called Mara Whitaker. Mara had been featured in Minnesota Lawyer magazine 6 months ago. The financial abuse specialist taking down Twin Cities predators. Her office was discreet, tucked into a renovated Victorian in St. Paul. She listened to my story without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes in precise handwriting. "Your stepfather has made 2 critical mistakes," she said when I finished. "First, he's mixed personal and business fraud. Second, he's underestimated you." She pulled out a legal pad, dividing it into columns: criminal, civil, protective. "We're going to approach this strategically. The criminal charges will take time. Federal prosecutors move slowly. But civil protection? That we can execute quickly. I need something for Thanksgiving." I said, "He's escalating. The way he grabbed me. The control over Mom." "Has he been physically violent?" "With me, once. Shoved me into a wall last year when I questioned him about Mom's credit cards. I didn't report it." Mara's pen stopped. "Recent enough for a restraining order. Any witnesses?" "Tyler was there. He'll confirm if pushed." "Good. Here's what we're going to do." She outlined a plan that was elegant in its simplicity. "I'll prepare an emergency protective order petition, ready to file. We'll also draft a civil suit for financial fraud. But Harper," she leaned forward, "we need a triggering event. Something witnessed, documented, undeniable." "Thanksgiving dinner," I said. "He's planning something. I can feel it. All his business associates coming. He wants an audience for whatever power play he's making." "Then we give him one he doesn't expect." Mara smiled, sharp as a blade. "I'm suddenly your old college friend who happens to be in town. Purely social." That afternoon, I made another call. Aiden Ross answered on the second ring. I'd found him through a forensic accounting forum, a Pinewater County financial inspector who'd recently collaborated with IRS criminal investigation on a major fraud case. "I've reviewed what you sent," he said carefully. "This is significant. The fund routing alone suggests structured transactions designed to avoid reporting requirements. Can you help?" "Officially? Not without a formal complaint and investigation. Unofficially? I have an aunt in Clearwater Ridge I've been meaning to visit. Maybe she needs a +1 for Thanksgiving." The pieces were falling into place. I created hidden cloud storage for all recordings, set up automated uploads from my phone, and installed a recording app that looked like a calculator. Every conversation with Calvin would now be evidence. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I discovered the worst part. Digging through property records, I found that Calvin had already transferred Mom's house into an LLC he controlled. The refinancing documents weren't for improvements. They were to cash out before abandoning the property to foreclosure. He was planning to destroy my mother's credit, take the equity, and leave her with nothing. I sat in my car outside Mom's house that night, watching their shadows move behind curtained windows. Inside my bag, manila envelopes held enough evidence to destroy Calvin Brandt, but evidence without opportunity was just paper. Thanksgiving would give me both. Calvin wanted an audience for his performance. He'd get one, just not the kind he expected. Every document was copied, every account tracked, every escape route blocked. The scent of fraud was identical whether in an office or at a dinner table, and I was about to serve Calvin a feast of consequences he'd never forget. The night before Thanksgiving, I transformed my childhood home into an evidence collection network. Mom and Calvin had gone to his office. Last-minute business. She'd texted, giving me 2 hours to prepare the battlefield. The doorbell camera was first, a discreet upgrade to the existing system, now streaming directly to cloud storage with audio enhancement. Early Black Friday purchase for you, Mom. I'd tell her if asked. The living room presented more challenges, but a decorative autumn arrangement on the side table concealed a voice-activated recorder with 8-hour capacity. My masterpiece was the dining room. Under my designated seat, the one I'd claimed every holiday for 15 years, I used museum putty to secure a slim digital recorder. The chair's wooden frame would amplify sound while hiding the device completely. My phone, propped against the centerpiece, would capture video under the guise of taking festive photos. Mara arrived at my apartment that evening for final preparation. She spread documents across my coffee table like a general planning invasion routes. The restraining order petition is complete but unfiled, she explained. The moment he becomes violent, verbal threats, physical contact, anything, we have grounds. This backup is the civil fraud complaint with supporting documentation, and this, she held up a third envelope, is a cease and desist for the property transfer, already filed with the county recorder's office. Will it stick? It creates a paper trail, makes it harder for him to claim ignorance later. She pulled out her phone. I've also been in touch with the mortgage company. They're very interested in potential fraud involving their refinancing products. Aiden Ross arrived next, and despite the circumstances, I had to admire his commitment to the cover story. He'd brought wine and flowers, looking every inch the devoted boyfriend of my non-existent aunt. IRSCI is already interested in Brant Ridge services, he said quietly. Your documentation accelerated an existing investigation. I can't make arrests, but I can observe and report, and if he threatens anyone, he patted his jacket pocket, revealing the edge of his inspector's badge. You're both taking risks for strangers, I said. Mara shook her head. Financial predators are never strangers to me. They all use the same playbook. Aiden nodded. Your evidence suggests at least 12 other victims through the logistics fraud alone. This isn't just about your family anymore. We rehearsed the dinner conversation, preparing natural ways to introduce financial topics. Aiden would ask about Calvin's business. Mara would mention property law casually. I would reference the missing money only if Calvin opened that door first. The goal isn't entrapment, Mara emphasized. It's documentation. Let him reveal himself. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and cold. I dressed carefully, professional enough to be taken seriously, casual enough not to raise suspicion. The manila envelopes fit perfectly in my large purse, hidden beneath a store-bought pie I'd contribute to dinner. I arrived early, finding Mom in the kitchen. Movements precise but mechanical. Tyler was already there, dark circles under his eyes, helping with mundane tasks in silence. You okay? I asked him quietly while Mom was distracted. Calvin's been making me sign things, he whispered. As a company officer, I don't understand half of it. After dinner, we'll talk. I promised. Just stay calm today. Calvin emerged from his office at noon, all false cheer and commanding presence. Harper, so glad you could make it. Your mother tells me you're bringing friends? Just Mara from college. She's in town for the holiday. And Aunt Patricia asked if she could bring someone. Aiden, I think. His smile tightened marginally. The more the merrier. I've invited some associates myself. important to maintain relationships, especially during the holidays. By 3 o'clock, the house filled with bodies and tension. Calvin's associates were two men who looked like they'd stepped from a mob movie's casting call, expensive suits that couldn't hide the threat underneath. They introduced themselves as investors, but their eyes cataloged exits and valuables. Mara arrived with perfect timing, playing her role flawlessly. "Harper, it's been too long." Her hug allowed her to whisper. "Recording device detected and active. We're live." Aiden appeared with my actual Aunt Patricia, who'd been briefed just enough to know today mattered. His presence shifted the room's dynamic immediately. Calvin's associates recognized something in his bearing: authority wearing casual clothes. As we gathered around the table, I made sure everyone was seated strategically. Calvin at the head, his associates flanking him, Mom to his right, looking smaller with each passing minute. Tyler beside her, a buffer, Mara across from the associates, positioned to observe everything, Aiden at the foot, controlling the room's other exit, and me, directly opposite Calvin, my hand resting on my purse with its manila envelope payload. The turkey sat between us like a golden promise of normalcy none of us believed. But beneath the table, my finger found the recorder's button, pressing it with the same certainty I'd felt signing my name to the fraud report. The stage was set, the actors in place. All we needed now was for Calvin to deliver his lines. He raised his wine glass, that practiced smile spreading across his face. "To family," he said, "and knowing your place in it." The war was about to begin. The turkey was carved with surgical precision while Calvin held court, his knife gliding through meat as smoothly as his words cut through truth. The small TV in the corner murmured football commentary, a mundane soundtrack to the growing tension. "This year's been exceptional for acquisitions," Calvin announced, serving himself dark meat. "Just closed on 3 properties in Riverside. Demo starts next month." "Riverside?" Mara asked innocently. "Isn't that the historic district?" Calvin's eyes flicked to her. "Historical designations are just paperwork. Money talks louder than preservation societies." His associate, the one with scarred knuckles, laughed. "Calvin's got a gift for finding opportunities where others see obstacles." "Speaking of opportunities," Calvin continued, his gaze settling on me. "How's that little compliance job? Harper? Still checking boxes and filing reports?" "Someone has to ensure companies follow the law." I replied evenly. "Law," he scoffed. "The law is what you can afford to make it, right, Tyler?" My brother flinched, pushing cranberry sauce around his plate. "I guess." "You guess?" Calvin's voice sharpened. "After everything I've taught you about business?" Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. "Calvin, please, it's Thanksgiving." "Exactly. A time to be grateful." His smile could have frozen hell. "Tyler should be grateful for the opportunity I've given him. Not many would hire an art school dropout." "I graduated," Tyler said quietly. "With a degree in what? Finger painting?" Calvin's associates chuckled on cue. "The real world doesn't care about your artistic vision, boy." Aiden cleared his throat. "I find artists often have unique perspectives on problem solving. What kind of art do you create, Tyler?" Before Tyler could answer, Calvin cut in. "He doesn't anymore. He works for me now. Real work." "What exactly does your company do, Mr. Brandt?" Aiden's question seemed casual, but I caught the undertone. "Development, consulting, making money from people too stupid to make it themselves." "Interesting portfolio. Brandt Ridge Services? Is that one of yours?" The room's temperature dropped 10 degrees. Calvin's fork paused midway to his mouth. "Where'd you hear that name?" "Oh, just general conversation. I work in finance. Always curious about local businesses." Calvin set down his fork with deliberate control. "Never heard of it. You must be mistaken." "My mistake." Aiden smiled. "Memory isn't what it used to be." The scarred associate leaned forward. "You work in finance? What bank?" "County office. Actually, financial oversight." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Calvin's jaw worked as he processed this information, his eyes calculating new angles. "Government work," he finally said, voice dripping disdain. "Another paper pusher, like Harper." "Calvin," Mom pleaded, "can we just enjoy dinner?" "I am enjoying it, Lorraine, aren't you?" He refilled his wine glass, the bottle hitting the table harder than necessary. "Though I notice the roof repair estimate is still sitting on your desk. 3 weeks now. I've been meaning to—" "You've been meaning to do a lot of things." His tone made her shrink. "Good thing I handle the important decisions." I couldn't stay silent. Mom's perfectly capable of making decisions about her own house. Calvin's attention snapped to me like a trap spring. "Her house? I think you're confused about whose name is on the deed now." "Actually," Mara interjected smoothly, "property transfers between spouses have specific legal requirements in Minnesota, especially when refinancing is involved." "Are you a lawyer?" Calvin's second associate spoke for the first time, his voice gravelly. "Estate planning," Mara replied, which was technically true. "It's fascinating how many people don't understand property law." Calvin's face flushed red. "I know exactly what I'm doing with my properties." "Your properties?" I pulled out my phone, pretending to check a message but actually adjusting the video angle. "Funny, since Mom paid off the mortgage with Dad's life insurance." The carving knife trembled in Calvin's grip. "Your father's dead. I'm the head of this family now." "Family?" Tyler suddenly spoke up. "Or employees you don't have to pay?" "Watch your mouth, boy." "Or what? You'll forge my signature on more documents?" Mom gasped. The associates exchanged glances. Aiden shifted slightly in his chair, hand moving to his pocket. Calvin stood slowly, both palms flat on the table. "I've built an empire while you've all played with your little hobbies. Harper with her rulebooks, Tyler with his crayons, and Lorraine with her book club fantasies. Without me, you're nothing." "Calvin, sit down," Mom whispered. "Don't tell me what to do in my own house." "It's not your house," I said quietly, reaching for my purse. "And after tonight, it never will be." His eyes tracked my movement, noting the manila envelope emerging from my bag. The football crowd roared from the TV as someone scored, but in our dining room, the only sound was Calvin's heavy breathing and the soft click of my phone capturing everything. "What?" he said, each word precise as a threat. "Do you think you're doing—" I placed the envelope on the table between us, my hand steady despite my racing heart. What I should have done months ago. The chair creaked as Calvin leaned forward, his shadow falling across the pristine tablecloth like spilled wine. Behind him, the kitchen clock ticked toward the moment everything would change. I pushed the manila envelope across the table toward my mother, the paper sliding through a drops of spilled gravy. "Mom, you need to see what Calvin's been—" The slap came before I could finish. Calvin's palm struck my cheek with enough force to snap my head sideways, the crack echoing off the dining room walls. My mother's plate went flying as his hand swept across the table, sending china shattered against hardwood. "You ungrateful bitch!" Calvin roared, spittle flying. The room erupted. Tyler jumped to his feet. Mom screamed. The associates half rose from their chairs, uncertain, but Aiden moved with practiced calm, standing slowly, his hand emerging from his pocket with a badge that caught the overhead light. "Mr. Brandt, I'm Inspector Aiden Ross, with the Pinewater County Financial Crimes Division." His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "I've just witnessed assault. I recommend you step back and remain calm." Calvin froze, his face cycling through rage, confusion, and fear. "You set me up. This is entrapment." "No, sir. This is consequence." Aiden remained perfectly still, badge held steady. "Please sit down." Mara had already moved, sliding a different envelope in front of Calvin with surgical precision. "Mr. Brandt, this is a civil complaint for financial fraud and an emergency protective order petition. The assault we've all just witnessed will be added to the filing." She turned to me, her phone already recording the red mark blooming across my cheek. "Harper, don't touch your face. We need to document this." The scarred associate stood abruptly. "We're leaving." "I wouldn't," Aiden said mildly. "You're material witnesses to an assault. Leaving would be inadvisable." Calvin grabbed the envelope, tearing it open with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the documents, growing wider with each line. "Brant Ridge Services. How did you—" "Your routing was sloppy," I said, my voice steady despite the burning in my cheek. "Every fake consultation, every skimmed payment, every fraudulent transfer, it's all there, including the evidence that you transferred Mom's house to your LLC without her knowledge." Lorraine agreed. "To refinancing for home improvements," Mara interrupted. "Not to transferring ownership. The signatures on the deed transfer were forged. We have handwriting experts ready to testify." Mom stared at Calvin, then at the papers scattered between them. "You stole my house?" "Our house. I've been paying for everything." "With money you stole from my mother's accounts," I said, pulling out bank statements. "And from Northland Meridian, and from at least 12 other companies through false billing." Tyler found his voice. "The documents you made me sign, they weren't contracts, were they? They were liability transfers. You were setting me up to take the fall." Calvin's carefully constructed world was crumbling, and everyone could see it. His associates had edged toward the door, distancing themselves from the wreckage. "This is ridiculous," Calvin sputtered, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. "You can't prove any of this." I reached under my chair, pulling out the small recorder, its red light still blinking. Every word, Calvin, every threat, every admission, all recorded. "That's illegal." "Minnesota is a one-party consent state," Mara said smoothly. "Harper had every right to record in her mother's home, a home that, legally, still belongs to Lorraine since the transfer was fraudulent." Aiden pulled out his phone. "I'm calling local PD. They'll want to process the assault, and I'll need to coordinate with them on the financial crimes." "Wait," Calvin's second associate spoke up. "We had no knowledge of any fraud. We're legitimate investors." "Then you'll want to cooperate fully," Aiden replied. "Starting with any documents Calvin asked you to sign today." The man reached into his jacket, pulling out papers. He said they were partnership agreements for the Riverside development. Mara examined them quickly. "These are backdated loan documents. He was trying to create a paper trail to hide embezzled funds." She looked at the associates with something approaching sympathy. "You were almost victims, too." The doorbell camera chimed, followed by knocking. "Police, we received a call about a domestic disturbance." Mom stood on shaking legs, moving to answer the door. She paused beside Calvin, looking down at the man who'd controlled her life for 3 years. "Get out of my house," she said quietly. "You can't." "Actually, she can," Mara interjected. "The cease and desist filed yesterday freezes all property transfers pending investigation. This house remains legally hers." 2 uniformed officers entered, taking in the scene, the broken dishes, my reddened cheek, Calvin's defensive posture, Aiden's badge. "Inspector Ross." The senior officer recognized him. "What's the situation?" As Aiden briefed them, I watched Calvin shrink. The man who'd terrorized my family, who'd stolen and lied and manipulated, was just another criminal caught in his own web. The recorder in my hand had captured it all, the evidence that would destroy him completely. But more importantly, my mother was free. The look in her eyes as she watched Calvin being read his rights wasn't fear anymore. It was relief. The trap had been sprung perfectly. He truly hadn't noticed who was sitting at his table until it was too late. The senior officer took my statement while his partner photographed my face from multiple angles. The mark had darkened to an angry red. Distinct finger patterns visible against my cheek. Each flash of the camera was another nail in Calvin's legal coffin. "I need you to write down everything that happened," the officer said, handing me a form. "Be as specific as possible about the physical contact." Mara stood beside me, her phone out. I'm filing the emergency protective order electronically right now, with the photographic evidence and witness statements. We should have approval within the hour. Calvin sat in the living room, hands cuffed behind his back, his associates giving statements to Aiden. The man who'd commanded the room 30 minutes ago now looked deflated, his expensive shirt untucked, his careful composure shattered. "This is kidnapping," he shouted. "False imprisonment. I want my lawyer." "You're free to call them from the station," the younger officer replied. "You're under arrest for assault. Anything else will be handled by Inspector Ross and federal authorities." Mom stood in the doorway between rooms, clutching the bank statements I'd given her. Her hands shook as she read them, each page revealing another betrayal. $60,000, she whispered. "He took $60,000 from my retirement accounts. We'll recover what we can." Mara assured her. "The freeze on his assets goes into effect immediately with the restraining order, and this," she pulled out another document, "is the emergency motion to void the property transfer. I'll file it first thing tomorrow, but the cease and desist means he can't do anything with the house." Tyler had been silent, standing by the window. Finally, he spoke. "The papers he made me sign last week. Am I going to prison?" Aiden looked up from his notes. "Were you aware of the fraudulent nature of the documents?" "No. He said they were routine business forms, performance reviews." "Then you're a victim, not a perpetrator. We'll need your full cooperation. All documents he had you sign, any recordings or emails." "I have everything," Tyler said, pulling out his phone. "I started recording our meetings after Harper warned me something was wrong. Every conversation from the last month." Calvin's head snapped up. "You little bastard." "Mr. Brandt," the senior officer warned, "I suggest you remain silent." Mara's phone chimed. "The emergency protective order is approved. Effective immediately. Calvin Brandt cannot come within 500 feet of Harper, Lorraine, or Tyler. No contact, direct or indirect. This includes the house," she continued, reading from her screen. "He has one supervised visit to collect personal belongings, scheduled through the court." Mom walked slowly to where Calvin sat, looking down at him with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure, cold clarity. 3 years, she said. 3 years I made excuses for you, ignored the warning signs, let you isolate me from friends, drain my accounts, terrorize my children. Lorraine, baby, this is all a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding was mine, thinking you loved me." She pulled off her wedding ring, setting it on the coffee table. "Harper was right. You're nothing but a parasite." The doorbell camera announced another arrival. Through the window, I saw an unmarked federal vehicle pull up. 2 agents in dark suits approached the house. "That would be IRS criminal investigation," Aiden said. "The Brandt Ridge Services fraud triggered a larger investigation, Mr. Brandt. You're looking at federal charges for wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion." The federal agents entered, their presence shifting the room's dynamic again. They spoke quietly with Aiden, reviewing documents on a tablet. "We'll be taking custody of Mr. Brandt after local processing," the lead agent announced. "This is now a federal matter." Calvin's associates were being released after giving statements, both looking eager to distance themselves from the chaos. The scarred one paused by the door. "For what it's worth," he told Mom. "We really were just investors. We had no idea about—" He gestured vaguely at Calvin. "This." As the officers prepared to transport Calvin, he made one last attempt at control. "Harper, you've destroyed this family. When I get out—" "Mr. Brandt," Mara interrupted, her voice sharp as winter ice. "You've just violated the protective order by threatening the plaintiff. Officer, please add that to your report." The senior officer nodded, making notes. "That's additional charges. Mr. Brandt, I'd strongly advise you to stop talking." They led him out in handcuffs, past the neighbors who'd gathered on their lawns, past the doorbell camera that captured his final humiliation. The man who'd strutted into our lives with such arrogance left it in the back of a police car. Inside, Mom collapsed onto the couch, tears finally coming. Tyler sat beside her, awkwardly patting her shoulder. The house felt different already, lighter, like windows had been opened after years of stale air. "What happens now?" Mom asked through her tears. Mara sat on her other side, professional demeanor softening. "Now we rebuild, restore your finances, reclaim your house, and make sure Calvin Brandt never hurts anyone again." I retrieved the hidden recorder from under my chair, stopping the recording after 4 hours and 17 minutes of evidence. Everything we needed to bury Calvin was on that tiny device. The turkey sat cold on the table, the meal abandoned, but for the first time in 3 years, my family was truly together, free from the shadow of Calvin's control. The federal agents were thorough, transforming our dining room into an impromptu evidence processing center. The lead agent, who'd introduced himself as Special Agent Martinez, spread documents across the cleared table where our abandoned dinner had been. "The scope is bigger than we initially thought," he told Aiden, pointing to a flowchart of connected companies. "Brandt Ridge Services is just one tentacle. He's got shell companies in 3 states. Mom stood in the doorway, still processing everything. "How long was he planning this?" "Based on the incorporation dates, before he even met you." Martinez replied gently, "You were targeted, Mrs. Brandt. Your husband's life insurance payout made you attractive to predators like Calvin." The truth hit her physically. Tyler steadied her, guiding her to a chair. "We need all financial records," Martinez continued. "Bank statements, tax returns, any documents he had you sign." "I have copies of everything," I said, pulling out my phone. 3 backup drives plus cloud storage, every document from the last 2 years. Mara had been on her phone, coordinating with various agencies. "The county prosecutor wants to add elder financial abuse charges. Lorraine qualifies under Minnesota statutes. That's another 5 to 7 years on top of the federal charges." Through the window, I watched Calvin being transferred from the local police car to the federal vehicle. His shoulders were hunched, his power stripped away. The neighbors were still watching, some recording on their phones. By tomorrow, everyone in Clearwater Ridge would know what happened at the Brandt house. "Inspector Ross," Martinez said, "we'll need your report on the financial transactions through Northland Meridian." Aiden handed over a thick folder. "Everything's here. Harper's compliance work uncovered at least 12 fraudulent routing schemes. We're looking at $400,000 in theft, minimum." "400,000?" Mom's voice was hollow. "He stole that much?" "From Northland alone," I clarified. "That doesn't include what he took from you, or the equity fraud with the house." The doorbell chimed again. This time it was a courier with more documents for Mara. She signed, then smiled grimly as she read them. "The bank has frozen all accounts associated with Calvin or his companies. The emergency injunction was approved. He can't move a penny." Calvin's associates had been released but remained on the lawn, talking with another federal agent. The scarred one kept shaking his head, presumably distancing himself from Calvin's crimes. "We were supposed to invest in legitimate development." I heard him say, "The Riverside project was real, or so we thought." Martinez looked up from his tablet. "The Riverside project was a money laundering front. Those historical buildings he was going to demolish? They don't exist. He was using the project to wash the stolen funds." Tyler had been quiet, but suddenly stood. "I need to show you something." He returned with a briefcase from Calvin's office. "He made me keep this in my car. Said it was insurance paperwork." Inside were bearer bonds, property deeds, and most damning, a ledger in Calvin's handwriting detailing every theft, every victim, every false company. His arrogance had made him document his own crimes. "This is..." Martinez paused, studying the ledger. "This is a confession. He wrote down everything." "He was proud of it," Tyler said bitterly. "Called it his empire-building blueprint. Made me study it to learn the business." Mara immediately photographed every page. "This changes the legal strategy. With this evidence, we're looking at RICO charges. This shows a pattern of racketeering activity. The federal agents began boxing evidence, transforming our family dinner into a crime scene. Each item tagged, photographed, cataloged. The turkey still sat on the counter, a surreal centerpiece to the chaos. Mrs. Brandt, Martinez addressed Mom formally. We'll need you to testify before a grand jury. Your testimony will be crucial. It's Miss Patterson, Mom corrected firmly. I'll be filing for divorce tomorrow. And yes, I'll testify. I want everyone to know what he did. The younger federal agent had been working on his laptop. Mr. Brandt's arrest is already trending locally. Someone posted a video of him being led out in handcuffs. Calvin's public humiliation was complete. The man who'd built his identity on control and intimidation was now a viral video of failure. As the agents prepared to leave with their evidence boxes, Martinez handed me his card. You did exceptional work. Miss Lane, have you ever considered federal law enforcement? We could use someone with your investigative skills. Through the window, I watched the federal vehicle pull away with Calvin inside. He'd entered our lives with such confidence, such cruel certainty. Now he left in custody, facing decades in prison, his empire collapsed, his reputation destroyed. The handcuffs glinted in the fading light as the car turned the corner. The man who terrorized my family was gone, and this time, he wouldn't be coming back. Mara began drafting the divorce petition on her laptop, while Aiden made calls to expand the investigation. Mom signed where indicated, each signature reclaiming a piece of her stolen life. It's over, she said quietly. No, I corrected, squeezing her hand. It's just beginning, the life you deserve, free from him. The house felt different already, no longer his kingdom, but our home again. The kitchen was finally quiet. The federal agents had gone, taking their evidence boxes and Calvin's future with them. The broken plates had been swept up, the table cleared, the abandoned turkey wrapped and refrigerated. But we remained, Mom, Tyler, and I, standing in the space that had been a battlefield just hours before. I pulled the memory card from the recorder, holding the tiny device that had captured everything. 4 hours and 17 minutes of Calvin's admissions, threats, and final undoing. Mara would need copies for the civil case. The federal prosecutors wanted the original. But first, I made one more backup. Some insurance you keep forever. I should have seen it, Mom said, staring at the spot where Calvin had sat. All the signs were there. Predators are good at hiding, Mara said gently, closing her laptop after filing the last document. They choose their victims carefully, isolate them systematically. You're not to blame for his crimes. Tyler was doing dishes, his way of processing, keeping his hands busy while his mind worked through the trauma. What happens to his company? Am I still employed? Technically, the company's assets are frozen, Aiden explained, preparing to leave. But I'd start looking for new work. The federal receivers will liquidate everything to pay restitution. I want to go back to art. Tyler said quietly, Calvin killed that part of me. But maybe I can find it again. Mom touched his shoulder. You will. We'll both find ourselves again. Mara packed her documents, leaving copies for us. The divorce will be expedited given the criminal charges. The house is protected. The fraudulent transfer is void. Your accounts will be unfrozen once we separate them from Calvin's. It'll take time, but you'll recover. What about the money he stole? I asked. Federal asset forfeiture will recover some. Restitution will be ordered. You won't get everything back, but you'll get enough to start over. Aiden shook my hand before leaving. Your documentation made this case. Without your evidence, he might have gotten away with it. He almost did, I replied. If he hadn't gotten greedy, hadn't pushed for that final refinancing. Criminals always push too far. It's their nature. He handed me his card. If you ever want to discuss that federal position, call me. We need investigators like you. After they left, it was just family, real family, not the twisted version Calvin had tried to create through control and fear. Mom made coffee. Instant. Because the good machine was something Calvin had bought, and she wanted nothing of his in her kitchen. "I signed that refinancing," she said suddenly. "The one you found. I'm sorry. Harper, you tried to warn me. You were being manipulated. That's what he did. Made you doubt yourself until his voice was louder than your own judgment." Tyler pulled out his phone, showing us a video. "Look, Calvin's arrest has 40,000 views already. The comments are brutal." I glimpsed the screen. Calvin being led to the federal vehicle, his empire crumbling in real time for the internet to witness. But I didn't need to watch. I'd lived it. "Delete it," Mom said firmly. "We're not going to dwell on him. Not one more minute of our lives wasted on Calvin Brandt." She was right. I pulled out the documents Mara had left. Plans for financial recovery, trauma counseling resources, a timeline for rebuilding. The future spread before us, no longer shadowed by Calvin's presence. "We'll sell this house," Mom decided. "Too many memories. I'll get something smaller, just for me, somewhere new." "What about Thanksgiving?" Tyler asked, gesturing at the refrigerator full of untouched food. "We'll have it tomorrow," Mom said. "Just us. A real Thanksgiving, for freedom, for family, for Harper who saved us all." "We saved each other," I corrected. The doorbell camera chimed one last time. Not police or federal agents, but Mrs. Chen from next door, holding a pie. "I saw the cars," she said simply. "Figured you might need this. Apple. Made it this morning." Mom accepted it with tears in her eyes. "Thank you." "That man was no good." "Mrs. Chen said firmly. "We all knew. Should have said something sooner." After she left, we sat at the clean table, eating pie straight from the tin with 3 forks. No ceremony, no pretense, just family finding peace in sugar and cinnamon. I recorded everything. I said finally, "Every moment from the minute he raised his hand, it's all documented, preserved, ready for court." "Good," Mom said. "Let the record show exactly who Calvin Brandt really was." Tyler raised his coffee mug. To Harper, who set the trap. To Mom, who survived. To all of us, who are finally free. We clinked mugs. The sound nothing like the wine glasses from earlier. This was better. Honest, real, ours. Tomorrow, Mom would file for divorce. Tyler would start reclaiming his art. I would return to work with a story that would become legend in compliance circles. The federal case would proceed. Calvin would face justice, and we would rebuild. But tonight, in the kitchen, Calvin had tried to rule. We simply existed as family. No performance, no fear, no walking on eggshells. Just us. Eating pie, washing dishes, and finally, breathing freely. I looked at the spot where I'd hidden the recorder under my chair. Such a small device to bring down such a large ego. But that's the thing about the truth. It doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be heard. Calvin had thought he was untouchable, that his control was absolute. He never noticed who was really at his table until it was too late. The compliance officer he'd mocked, the stepson he'd belittled, the wife he'd isolated. We were his downfall. And honestly, that was something worth giving thanks for. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to hear what you think.